Qualys recently announced the results of 2023 Total Cloud Security Insights, which explores how cloud misconfigurations are the most critical issue for securing cloud environments. Qualys analysis covers the most serious cloud misconfiguration issues discovered in the three major cloud providers AWS, Microsoft Azure, and GCP, and how these issues can be fixed. Today, we have Travis Smith, the Vice President for the Threat Research Unit at Qualys, joining us as we explore the results of these configurations. Thank you for joining us, Travis.
Happy to be here.
All right, so can you start by giving us like a brief overview on the Qualys 2023 Total Cloud Security Insights report? Why was it commissioned and how did you gather the data, and like what are the key insights or the key takeaway from it?
Sure. So Qualys has a wide variety of security solutions that we provide to our global customers. So what we did is in earlier this year we had launched a True Risk Research report, which kind of touched on the security insights across the entire enterprise architecture. And one of the interesting insights that we started noticing trends on was from the cloud side, as we have a lot of customers that are running compute resources within like you mentioned AWS, GCP, and Azure. And we wanted to understand what the risks are from there. So we started looking at a lot of the anonymized data from our entire global platform, from everywhere from the Americas to to Asia and Europe, around what are kind of the risks associated with running these critical resources in the cloud itself, and what are the threats that organizations are facing. So we looked at a lot of the data that we had, trillions of data points, from anywhere from misconfigurations, vulnerabilities, and malware that we're seeing within the cloud, and what are the risks and the actual threats that these enterprises are facing.
All right, so I had a look into the report, and your report highlights that there are 5 risk factors when it comes to cloud. Can you briefly elaborate on what these risk factors and what are some of the key lessons that's been learned from it?
Sure, absolutely. So when any organization is looking to move to the cloud, there's something that we call a shared risk security model, where the cloud security provider is responsible for a portion of the security versus the actual organization that is deploying into there. And part of that is configuration, what we call cloud security posture management, around what are the configuration settings to prevent attackers from getting into cloud computing environments and things like that. And one of the de facto standards is the Center for Internet Security, and their hardening benchmark, similar to what they have for on-premise devices for Windows and networking. They have similar benchmarks for cloud computing in AWS, GCP, and Azure. So we looked at a lot of what the security configurations are set at, from a default standpoint versus what organizations are intentionally configuring. And there's a few things that we took a look at. Anytime we talk about cloud security and there's breaches, obviously S3 buckets is obviously top of mind. That comes up in a lot of news articles whenever there's a breach in cloud environments. And obviously that did come up as well, where we saw roughly 30% of S3 buckets still being exposed. But some of the other ones that we're seeing is encryption being an issue out there, as well as IAM controls, identity and access management. Things like multi-factor authentication still not widely deployed in these cloud ones. Right, so that was one of the biggest things that we highlighted, is that these cloud misconfigurations are definitely enabling exploitation for attackers. The other side of reducing your attack surface is from configuration standpoint is eliminating vulnerabilities. We looked at the vulnerabilities on actual computing resources in the cloud, specifically running in cloud environments. And there's a significant number of vulnerabilities. So I think 4% of assets that are in the cloud are directly connected to the internet. And of the vulnerabilities we discover in there, any vulnerability that's externally facing, only 50% of them are patched, right? And these are vulnerabilities that are weaponized, and some of these dangerous ones like Log4Shell. Log4Shell in the cloud, as an example, is only patched 30% of the time, which it's a vulnerability that's been out for quite some time. So there's a lot of different avenues that attackers have to get into cloud environments. And what we're seeing is that ultimately is leading to cryptocurrency, cryptojacking, crypto mining. That's the type of malware that we're seeing most often deployed in cloud computing environments. It's not ransomware, information stealing, or things like this that are a danger to the breaches that we typically see for organizations announcing, rather than it's these threat actors are deploying crypto mining in the cloud, which isn't going to steal these secrets, but as organizations are having to pay for compute resources, that can hit the bottom line of organizations, where if this is left untreated and untouched, this can be 6-7 figures, very quickly escalate the cost of running resources in AWS, GCP, and Azure.
All right, so this was a new information to me when I also saw the report. It's like ransomware used to be number one in all the cloud security issues, and now we are seeing into crypto, which is becoming very popular. So, what would be your recommendations for organizations looking to reduce their cloud security risk?
There's two, right? One is looking at the industry best practices for configuration settings, and that's the de facto there is the Center for Internet Security, right? And they have standards around what are the various settings that you need to take a look at, and they have very prescriptive guidance around how you can configure these different settings, whether it's logging into a console, click this button, change the settings, to actually here's a Python or PowerShell script to run to change the setting and hit AWS config to change these things. So very, very easy for organizations to go through and take a look at what are the biggest risks to their organization. And within the report itself, we tie back a lot of these configuration settings to the MITRE ATT&CK framework itself and the tactics and techniques associated with it. Right. So if you're, as an organization, really more interested in preventing initial access, right, then we can tie back those different controls into initial access and say, something like valid accounts or cloud accounts are only protected very, very little, right? So most organizations aren't doing that. So that's something that your organization should go forth and do. Secondary to that, as I mentioned, the other side of the remediation side, or that the prediction and prevention side of the house, is vulnerabilities, right? There's a lot of vulnerabilities that are going to be on the computing resources that organizations have in the cloud, similar to that they're going to have on-premise. And trying to tell an organization to patch every single vulnerability just isn't really going to cut it. What organizations to do is just really take a risk-informed approach to these remediations, and understand what are the vulnerabilities that are introducing the most risk, right? And those are the ones that are actively being exploited or have evidence of being exploited in the wild. Leveraging something like this CISA known exploited vulnerability catalog, or some other intelligence that this vulnerability has been has an exploit available in the wild. So like someone like myself or you can go on to ExploitDB or GitHub and download the exploit code and run it against an environment, right? If you or I can do it, that means an attacker anywhere in the world can do it. And if this vulnerability is on an externally facing asset, that means somebody sitting anywhere on a beach anywhere in the world can exploit this vulnerability against your organization. And that's
really scary to hear.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Travis. Thank you for all your insights, and it was really good talking to you. I hope to see you again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.